Hey everyone, Jamal here with Creator, and I'd love to introduce everybody to Bonnie. Bonnie, feel free to introduce yourself, say what you do.
Hi, I am Bonnie Marquette, and I work as a film location scout for motion pictures and commercials and stuff like that, and using photography. And basically, what a location scout does is we're given a script or we're giving guidelines of what a movie's looking for. As far as I've scouted for all kind of crazy things, houses. My first scout, I was looking for the top of a mountain in Hawaii, and they asked me to look for it in Louisiana. It's called cheating. They ended up filming it in Hawaii, but that's how that was the first thing that I was looking for. So it was interesting. And we look for all kind of crazy things: haunted houses, swamps, you name it. And we basically go out. You have to have some knowledge of photography. You don't have to be an expert photographer, but what you're trying to do is you're trying to show the director of photography and the director essentially what the location that you are photographing would look like through their lens, and then they see if that will fit the type of scene that they're trying to shoot. And it's a pretty interesting profession, I guess you could say. We're on the road a lot. I put probably 200,000 miles on my truck because I scout all over Louisiana. And it's fun. You get to work with some big stars sometimes, and you get to work with, I've done everything from, my first big real job was Twilight, Breaking Dawn, the saga. And it was a huge high budget movie. But then I've also just did one with Ethan Hawke that was like almost no budget. It was very, very low budget, but we had a great time doing it. It's a lot of fun. So, and I'm also a still photographer on set as well.
Yeah, awesome. So, how the heck do you become a location scout?
Well, in my case, it was pure luck. I've been a photographer my whole life, and I used to publish a magazine that was tourism related. So I had been around all around my parish here in Louisiana. We don't have counties; we have parishes. And I had been all around this area. And as it happened, we had a film scout who actually was a location manager that was doing a Battleship. And he came into our parish, and our tourism director was not from here, the one that we had at the time. So she called me just because I knew all of the different locations and, neat places around here, and asked me if I would just drive him around. And I did. And that lasted for about 3 weeks. And his name is Mike Meehan. He's one of the best location managers I've ever worked with. He's the one that did all the Pirates of the Caribbean. So I didn't realize how big he was, and I had no clue who he was at the time. And I did that for about 3 weeks, and during that process, decided I really liked it, and he essentially trained me. And then from there, I went on and got hired on Twilight, on Breaking Dawn, and was subsequently trained by Mike Burmeister, who is another very big location manager. And I've been in it ever since. And it was just pure luck, and have gone on and become a location manager for a couple of big ones and a lot of mid and small ones.
And probably a good question to jump into.
Mm-hmm.
Alex asked the question, how many locations have you scouted throughout your time doing this?
Oh my gosh, my database, I think the last time I checked with my database, I had about, right at about 60,000 images. And so total locations, it's probably, if I had to guess, I don't know, about 400 or 500. Because I take a lot of different shots. There's a certain way to scout, the way I was trained. And for instance, if I'm scouting a room, say they need a bedroom or a boardroom or whatever, the way that I was taught is you shoot what's called meat and potatoes, which means you essentially do angle to angle, angle across the room one way, turn on angle the other way. It's kind of boring. So they can see the bones of the room. Also do the same thing exterior. But then I also shoot what I call beauty shots, which is usually it's the low angle, really cool looking stuff that I think the director of photography might, would envision shooting that way. So we try to show them when we're shooting, basically, again, the bones of whatever it is we're shooting. And if it's outdoors, it can be a pasture. I actually have scouted for pastures and all sorts of things. So you show them bones, and then you show them some beauty shots, and they're very specific on the size and how they're shot, and et cetera, et cetera.
what makes, and this is from Carlos, what makes
Mhm.
a good location to film, and what makes a location that isn't great?
That's a good question. And a lot of scouts, when they're starting out, don't really realize what all it takes. When you find a location, it can be really cool looking, but you also have to keep in mind, and this is what I ask my producers or directors, whoever has hired me to go scout, you also have to keep in mind how large your crew size is, because if they're going to film there, they have to park all their trucks, you have to feed them there. You have to provide restrooms and all this other kind of, kind of boring stuff, but it's all very important. You can find a really, really cool location, but if you don't have any place to put the crew, then that makes it very difficult to get to. Most of the time, not most of the time, but a lot of the time too, they're looking for locations with a lot of character. So here in Louisiana, we have a lot of old plantation homes, old falling down houses, which shoot really, really nice because they have the flaking paint, they have all of that character and that texture that otherwise the art crew would have to come in and age the property, if you will. So in a case like that, that's very beneficial. The other thing that's extremely beneficial when you can find it, which luckily we have in some of these older houses, are really high ceilings. And the reason that a high ceiling is really, really one of the biggest things you look for is because you have to consider they have to bring in the cameras, they have to bring in their lighting, the grips have to come in to hang their stuff that they hang. And so if you've got room to work, that is really beneficial. If it's a real small, tight room with low ceiling, it's really hard for them to film in.
That's very interesting about thinking about having to age a room, or does it
Mm-hmm.
have high ceilings for the lights,
Right.
or even just the look and the texture, and can the crew actually fit around? Yeah, those are all things that I think you can actually add to photography as well when you're doing the shoot. So that's very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Another question here would be, what are some of the most impressive places that you've seen, or the worst places that just have ended up not really working well?
The two of the most impressive, well, one I guess you could say, I'll start off. And I'm going to show y'all pictures of it. My favorite place to shoot is an old plantation home. It was built in the early 1800s. I'm now really good friends with the owner. We've shot a couple movies there. And the plantation is not restored. So it has that texture. It's got the peeling paint. It's got the exposed brick. And it has the 12-foot ceilings. It's absolutely gorgeous. And it shoots really, really nice. And it sits on about 1,000 acres, so obviously there's plenty of room, for crew and such. So it's probably my favorite. Another one that was my favorite, they've now started to dismantle it, and I have a few pictures of it, is an old sugar cane or sugar manufacturing processing plant, if you will, that has been shut down for about 30 or 40 years. And inside of it it's just crazy. There's gears, there's this huge, massive things everywhere. A movie couldn't afford to come in and dress a set the way this place looks. The problem is, and we shoot there all the time too, and I'm going to have some pictures of it, is that everything in there is covered in grease and dirt and grime from it being so old and from all the mechanical stuff in it. So every night when we would come in, we did a movie there called Nocturna. And when we would come in each night or each day, depending if we're shooting nights or days, would be just so covered in grease that we ended up just throwing away our clothes. And I had one of my producer friends who was on the movie. He told me he was staying at a hotel, and they would come in, and because the stuff smelled too. You smelled like kind of rotten sugar when you got home, and you're full of grease. And he would actually literally, he said he'd walk into his hotel room, take off all his clothes, stick them in a bag, and then stick them outside, and they would come by and pick him up and throw them away for him because it was that bad. But it looks beautiful on film.
Let's, I guess, get into the screen share, because I think that would be great because you started referencing those. So let's switch to that, and then we'll go from there.
Okay. Let me, let's see, let me do this. What you're looking at. Okay. Is it up, Jamal?
Not quite yet.
Okay.
Probably might want to try that one more time.
Yeah, let me try it one more time here. Oh, let's see.
Aha.
Okay. Now is it up?
Yes. Perfect.
Okay. 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 So for y'all, all of y'all that have seen the Twilight Saga Breaking Dawn, when they did the fight sequence, a lot of the sequences where they're in the snow and they're in the woods and they're fighting with the wolves. This is actually this was what kind of got me started. We shot all of that in this. This is a livestock agricultural arena where they hold, rodeos and things like that. This is a massive building. The reason that this is so important is because there's no, as you can tell, there's no structures holding up, no beams or columns, if you will, holding up the ceiling. So it's a completely suspended ceiling. And so they were able to get in there, build the whole set. And that's what it looked like when it was done. That's fake snow. The green stuff all around there is called green screen. And so the actors would come in and they would do their scenes or whatever. And then in post, they put in the mountains or the trees and et cetera, et cetera. And we also did all the special effects with the wolves there. So that's what it started at. And that's what it looked like after they got it finished. Now, this is also from the set of Breaking Dawn from Twilight. I was looking for a pasture that we had enough area that they could build, if you watch the movie, called The Russian Village. And I found this one. It's actually owned by a prison outside of St. Francisville in a little town called Jackson. And so they went in, we marked it out. That's what those pink things are. They cut the path where they wanted to build the town, the Russian Village. And that's what it ended up looking like. And all of that is hand built. And when it was done, it was all removed too. So it started at a pasture, ended up looking like that. They also needed some wood to do the campfire scene where Patrick, or the big actor, I've forgotten his name now, and the other guy were back there camping. And this is actually a ball field across the street from the Russian Village. And we did the campfire scene in the woods behind there. And that's what it looked like. That's all fake snow. Now this is a plantation that has been used numerous times in movies. And this is the original plantation in North and South. It's called Greenwood. And we also shot portions of the host there in the Oak Alley, which is this. So the scene where the boy and the girl run out of the front of the big, beautiful house and then collapse under these beautiful oaks is actually this setting right here. Now, a lot of people think, when they think of Louisiana, they think of that we're all just swamps and flat. This is actually a cliff at the plantation I was talking about earlier that I really like shooting. And the reason that my truck is in there when you're scouting and you're looking at things, if I had taken this picture without my truck there, it's impressive, it looks big, but my truck is a 3/4 ton truck. It's huge. So putting the truck in there gives it what's called scale. And you'll notice in some of these pictures, I either put people or a vehicle, anything in there so that when the director or the director of photography, the producers or whatever are looking at the photos, they can tell just how high this is. This cliff, I measured it online, I believe is 110 feet high. So this is the house I was talking about. This is Ellerslie. It's private. It's not open to the public. And we've shot the host. We've shot Nocturna there. The reaping was shot there. And a couple of others. But this is the front of the house. And you can tell it's not restored. And so the texture is really gorgeous. And this is it. This is the set of Nocturna when the house is all lit up. We were shooting inside. And they set the lights up like that so they can it looks like moonlight coming in. And we were shooting, Nocturna was a vampire movie, so obviously they wanted a lot of night shoots. One of the perks of being a scout is every now and then I get to go up in a helicopter and do some aerial shots, which I love. This is Ellerslie, the same plantation, from the view of the helicopter. So when I'm scouting, this is one of the meat and potato shots I was talking about. They needed a dining room, and so I'm standing in one corner shooting across so they can see, how long the room is. You can tell that the ceilings are really high. And so I shot this. They loved it, and it ended up being this shot. This is again from Nocturna, the vampire movie. And same table, same room, a little different angle, but that's how they ended up using it. Another shot from Nocturna. Yes, we had live wolves. We also had a live owl. And this is his main room, I believe. And the reason there was a board under that one black wolf is because that's how they train the wolves and the wildlife to take their mark, and they're trained to stand on that board. Now, this is the staircase at Ellerslie, which is phenomenal. It's 3 stories tall, freestanding. It spirals, goes all the way up. They love this for Nocturna, and ended up using it in a scene with some of the actors going up to the 2nd story. There's also a family graveyard behind the house. This is one of our lead actors. That gravestone is actually styrofoam. So we made that. But I thought this was a neat shot. And the directors and the director of photography also look at how the light falls. It's something else as a scout that you look for, is where the sun sets, where it rises, et cetera, et cetera. They knew they wanted an afternoon shot with the light. That way, when I went out and scouted the graveyard, they made the headstone, but they put the actor where they wanted him to get that shot, that rim shot around his face, where you can see the light. Now, this is Sinclair. This is the old sugar mill I was talking about that's greasy and nasty and all of that, but it shoots beautifully. This is a building at Sinclair that we used, in Nocturna and a couple other different movies. This is one of our actresses that was in Nocturna. She was number 3 in Miss Universe, and a sweet little girl. Her name is Manana Vicente, I believe. And so they asked me to do some shots of her because as this vampire, she apparently lived 3 different lives. That was one. This is the second one. So she had to dress up in all these different costumes. This is all inside that building. And then this is on the back side of that building. This is her 3rd life, I assume. And that's what's called a picture car that's in there. They will rent cars of different eras, et cetera, and use them in the films, and they're called picture cars. Now, this is the inside of the building. Doesn't look like much. It looks like a bunch of pipes and everything. But for a director and a director of photography, this is phenomenal because once the set is dressed, it ends up looking like this. And yes, he's trying to stab her. No, he doesn't end up being successful. But you can see all the stuff they added, the candles and the can on fire and all that kind of stuff. But all of the original piping and iron and all that, that's all original to the building. This is one of the other actors with his blue contacts in, and again, you can see the building in the back. This is one of the set photos that I got of him, and they just dressed small stuff. This is a building that we shot. I did a show with Jason Connery, Sean Connery's son, and it was a MMA, which is the mixed martial arts wrestling thing. He was looking for a big warehouse, so it looked like an underground wrestling match, and I found this for him, and we turned it. I went in and shot the interior so you could see what it looked like, and we turned it into that. So they built the ring inside of the building, and it came out really, really nice. And these are just a couple of shots from the building. 2 of the actors. Now, and what I was saying too earlier is that part of a scout's job is that you have to figure out where you're going to feed people, where you're going to park people. This was the crew, and I had to feed them in one of the other warehouses that was on the property. So no AC. It was a little uncomfortable, but we made it. But at least they were undercover when it rained. Now, this is a bar in Baton Rouge that on the Philly Kid as well, that we wanted to build. They needed a bar that was big enough to build, again, another wrestling ring. And this is what it looked like before. And then this is when we were filming. Now, these photos are not very good because I wasn't shooting still at the time. Stills, I was just shooting with my iPhones. They're a little grainy, but you can kind of see how we built the ring. And all of the people that are sitting there at the tables and such are all extras. But this was all built in the bar, on the dance floor. And that's a view above it, with your crew and your director and photography and such all on the right-hand side. This was shot at the exact same bar. This is a movie that has not been released yet, but this picture has gone around. This is when I shot, and he's on the This is the main actor, the lead actor. He's standing on the stage, and the movie is called Blaze. It's an Ethan Hawke movie, and it was an absolute joy to work on. Probably one of my favorites, if not my favorite so far. They also needed, for Ethan Hawke's movie, they needed a grand building. And this is actually a state-run mental hospital for the criminally insane that we shot at. This is the interior of the main building. This is that's Ethan there. This is one of their cemeteries that was just crazy looking. There's no markings, all just wild headstones, or just the crosses with no headstones. Shot beautifully. Again, this is just a meat. This is inside of the mental hospital. This is just meat and potatoes. I know it's boring, but this way they can see how high those ceilings are and how much room they have to work in. And there's Ethan, and this was the highlight of my still photography career so far, because that is Chris Christopherson, and he's on the show, and it was just a delight to shoot him. He's a wonderful, wonderful actor, fantastic actor, and a really nice guy. This is the outside of the main building, where the actor's going to come up, going to walk up towards, then one of the scenes going to walk up towards this main building, and that's the main actor. That's the lead actress and Ethan and one of the other actresses in front of the building. I also just did a show with Alex Pettifer from Magic Mike fame. And we had the wonderful opportunity to also work with Robert Patrick from The Terminator. And we were doing scenes just outside of the police station in the little town where I live. We did a scene in there. This is outside of a supermarket that we shot in for 2 nights, and then on the exterior. So in this case, I needed to find a supermarket that would work, a police station that would work, a house that would work. You know, then they give us a whole list of things that he's looking for. And I took him around and we scouted for a couple of weeks. This is on set at a house where is also the same location, the same property where we shot Maze Runner. But this is the back of the house. This is Alex with some of the young actresses outside of the house. And again, you can kind of see the character because the paint's kind of peeling, things look kind of rough. They love stuff like that. And this is kind of what a film set looks like. There's stuff everywhere. Now also in Louisiana, I don't think we have mountains. We don't have mountains, but we do have a huge sand pit not too far from where I live that a friend of mine owns. And we've done scenes from Maze Runner. They've done Jonah Hex. I have one of their sets up here in a minute. But again, the reason that the people are in the picture is to show the director and the DP, director of photography, the scale of how big this thing is. Because otherwise, if you just showed them this picture, they would have no clue. So scale is very important when you're photographing. And that's a director, Bonnie, who's up on top. She climbed that thing so I could get proper scale. So you can see how massive it is. And in Maze Runner, where the kids are rescued and they pick them up in the black helicopter and take out of there from the desert, that's actually where that was shot, was in the sand pit. This is a set from Jonah Hex. I wasn't on Jonah Hex, but they hadn't finished taking the set down. But if you watch Jonah Hex, that was part of the big town that burned. I also have to scout really crazy places. This was a real fun film that I did called Dead Still. I did stills on it, and they shot at this is a haunted house in Baton Rouge. So this is all, it's like a wall. It's already a movie set. This is one of our little actresses. This is Ben Browder. He was the lead actor, and all of this was shot inside this haunted house. This is some of our characters with one of the Booth brothers. This is Chris Booth, who did the movie, and he was the producer, and his brother was the director. This is some of their outfits, and we also shot in their fake cemetery. I thought that was kind of a cool shot. Now, if you look at this house too, if you look at the way that it's aged, that is the way that house looks. We used this house to shoot in Dead Still, and that's one of the lead characters there, and 2 of the others. But you can see how beautiful the house is behind them. This is the inside of the house. That's not, they didn't put the dirt on the walls. That's the way the house looks. So it's shot beautifully. This is inside the house, tall, again, tall ceilings. This room was pretty small, but they had the tall ceilings, so we all kind of crammed in there, and they got the shots. This is one of my favorite actors. And of course, now I'm drawing a blank here. Anyway, he's wonderful. And Ray Wise, sorry. This is Ray Wise. And again, great actor. This is on Dead Still. And another shot of him with the house in the background. Now, y'all might know who this is. This is Ryan Felipe. I did his directorial debut. It was called Catch Hell. And we shot all around Baton Rouge, and we shot at a friend of mine's swamp, which I'm going to show y'all in just a second. Ryan doing different things. This little cabin at the bottom we actually built next to a swamp. And another thing that as a scout, they needed a place that looked industrial, where they could use it as a background. Now that's part of Exxon, which obviously we can't get on Exxon's property. Another thing as a scout is that there's some things that are off limits, and you have to make sure that there's no sign showing. You know, it's called branding. You don't want a big Exxon sign splashed in the background that could get picked up by the cameras. So those are the type of things that you look for. And this shot is what I shot for him that sold him on that location, because we shot it later at night, and it was really pretty. And there's no signage anywhere. They also needed a guard shack, so we used one of the guard shacks in the Exxon parking lot. So he got what he needed. He got the guard shack, and he also got the industrial behind him. This is the swamp I was telling you about that a friend of mine owns, where we did the main part of Catch Hell. That's Ryan and one of the other actors. And you can tell by how tall the trees are. Those are cypress trees next to a swamp. They're massive, so it shot really nice. And Ryan, impatient as he is, we had to clear some trees to build the little cabin, so he goes and starts clipping them himself. He's a really nice guy. And as luck would have it, about 2 weeks before we started filming and we're just getting ready to build the cabin, we had a hurricane come through. And so the only way we could access the actual set was by boat. So that's our director of photography, our art director, Ryan, and his friend. And then the man pulling the boat is the man who owns the property. And this is right after the hurricane. So you have to kind of be resilient and, you know, work around whatever weather throws you, especially in Louisiana. This is the cabin. Again, it was all hand built. And once it was done, it was all torn down, but it came out beautiful. And another thing to deal with as a location scout too is that we had to be very careful to try not to disturb the grass or anything. You know, like trucks and such drive up in front of the cabin, and then it rained and it stormed, and this is what happened. And we got a couple of them stuck in there, but we were done filming on the outside. They had moved to film on the inside, so at that point they could drive, and it turned into a muddy mess. Another problem with scouting, I do a lot of outdoor scouting. I'm kind of known for scouting woods and wild areas and things like that. This little critter, I came across him about 2 o'clock in the morning when we were shooting Catch Hell at the cabin, and that's a copperhead. And so I had to go back and alert the crew. So another thing too is that when you're scouting, you have to be very conscious of whatever natural things may be out there that could hurt somebody, and that's one of them. That's Jeff Galpin, one of our stunt guys, getting ready to go into one of the sloughs. Again, it's access. We have to figure out how to get the boat in. So that's things to take into consideration. And in the end, that's the swamp all lit up. That's actual lights that we put in the swamp. And then we added what's called atmosphere. It's like this gas that's all that smoky stuff that you see in the movies. And that's how it's shot.
Oh, that was really cool. I think what I'm just so amazed about is all of the different things that go into it. Obviously, there's the photography aspect and some of the technicalities as far as understanding framing and understanding where light's falling and when it's coming in, but then also just like all the organizational stuff that you're thinking
Right.
about, and all of the business stuff and coordination, bringing in food, thinking about access, signage. It just seems like this is very multidisciplinary, and I think a lot of people wouldn't necessarily think that that's what can go into location scouting, but I'm very shocked by that, and I think it's actually very cool.
Well, another funny thing, and I had to tell Alex this when I was scouting with him, is his movie that's coming out is some of the movies you have to also, I need to read the script and talk to the director, because some movies have things in it like, people getting killed or people doing bad things or whatever, and you have to be really careful. And he laughed because I told him this. I said, because he had 2 sex scenes or a couple of them in his movie, and he needed some houses to shoot these in. And I told him, and I tell all of my directors, I said, you have to be really careful about who you approach, because people, especially here in the Deep South, they're more willing to let you come in and shoot a scene where somebody's getting killed because they know it's fake. But if somebody's going to come in and have sex in their house, they're not really cool with that, even though it's fake too. And the problem was, a couple of these houses, as I was driving around, I don't normally scout with directors, I normally scout by myself, but every now and then I'll take the director with me. And he found a couple of them. We pulled up to the gate, and there were crosses everywhere. And I said, I don't think this one's going to work. I don't think they're going to be into it, and so it's a lot of things like that. I mean, you have to find the right owner who is open to whatever it is they want to do in these movies, because sometimes it's a little graphic or what have you. And so those are kind of clues. If there's a tricycle in the front yard, you might not want to bring a slasher movie there. If it's a Disney movie, I can sell it all day long, but the other movies, it's a little hard. So that's other things you have to take into mind.
Cool. Yeah. Let's jump back. I know there's a couple more questions here. So based on your experience, what's the hardest type of location to find?
Here, the hardest is, it seems like every other movie wants a 2-story old falling down farmhouse in the middle of a rolling hills area. And we have the rolling hills, we have the old 2-story farmhouses, but we don't have any in an open field like that anymore, because back in about the 30s and 40s, we used to have them, but they tore them all down and built new modern homes and used the land for crops. And that's so elusive. All the scouts in Louisiana are looking for the same house, and I actually found one. I know where there is one, but the other consideration when you scout is that they're going to let you know where their production office is going to be, and if it's union, generally, you have to stay within a 30-mile radius. There's all kind of union rules, or they have to pay them more, et cetera, et cetera. I don't really get into all that. But in other words, it wouldn't make any sense, especially if it's a low-budget show, to shoot at one house that's, say, in Baton Rouge, and then drive 200 miles to go shoot a swamp, unless it's very specific, unless they can afford it, because it gets so expensive every time you move a crew, that you try to stay within your radius. So this house that I found that looks like that everybody wants, unfortunately, is almost to the Texas border, which is about 150, 160 miles from Baton Rouge, which is the kind of the area where I scout. So we haven't used it yet, but hopefully one day we will. So that's probably the hardest, is finding that particular thing.
Cool. And then one of the last questions here I'm seeing is, you kind of answered this a little bit, but I guess you can go into more detail. But what's the best memory from working on Twilight and The Maze Runner?
Let's see. Maze Runner, the funny story about Maze Runner, I was the location manager for Maze Runner, and we actually shot that in a cow pasture. So when you're watching the movie and they're in the maze, and the walls were 3D, but the doors that opened, the big doors, we actually built those out of styrofoam. And they were shooting late at night on set one night, and I was, when you manage, I'm working 20-hour days, so I'm exhausted. About 2 o'clock in the morning, they keyed up, so I'll have microphones in our ears, and they keyed up and they said, "Hey, Bonnie, we got a problem." And I said, "Well, what's your problem?" I'm exhausted. I said, with a manager, you get everybody's problems. And they said, "We have cows on set." And I said, "What?" Somebody had gone in and left a gate open, and we ended up with the entire owner's herd of cows on the set. And in Maze Runner, we grew all in this maze and this thing. They grew all this corn. We grew all of that. I mean, it was all
Oh,
that
and
was
they
fashionable.
ate it.
The cows went in and started eating the corn, and most of these crew were from LA and New York, and they're like, oh my God, they're gonna hurt us? I said, no, they're not gonna charge you, and you just leave them alone, just ignore them. And they said, well, let's try to run them back. And I said, no. So anyway, so I had to wake the owner up at 2 o'clock in the morning, and he had to go out there. Wonderful man. He had to go out there. We were in his truck, and he has this way that he calls his cow, just like, come on, kind of weird thing. And so he's calling the cows to get them back in, and they're keying up in my ear saying, Bonnie, tell John to be quiet because we're picking him up on audio. And I said, well, it's either the cows eat the corn or the guy gets the cows in. They kept recording, and apparently later on in post, they edited him calling the cows out. So that was the funniest with Maze Runner. With Twilight, oh gosh, the neatest thing about Twilight was when they built the house. There's that kind of treehouse looking thing. We built that on stage at Celtic. The craftsmanship was amazing that went into that. All of the sets were just absolutely amazing with what they built. So that was pretty cool.
And then obviously this talk is kind of catered to location scouting, but it seems like that's one part of it. I keep hearing you talk about I was doing such and such, we were doing such and such. So it seems like the location scout is just one small beginning piece in that you actually manage it and you're on set and you're coordinating kind of through the whole movie. Is that right?
Well, not necessarily. Some people only scout, and the scouts are usually the first ones called in. And they only scout, and when they're done scouting, then that's it. They leave. They're not on set. Once they start filming, they find the locations, they're done. I've actually retired from managing, but I went from scouting to managing, and then what a lot of managers do is they'll scout themselves. If it's a really big film, then they'll call, they'll get 2 or 3 other scouts out on the road and try to cover areas. We just did a big scout for a big film that we were trying to get here. But a manager then will either hire scouts, scout themselves, whatever, set everything up, and then go in. That's a whole different animal, is managing. The good thing is, though, if you are a manager or you have managed or worked with one, it'll make you a much better scout because most scouts don't think about, ceiling heights and crazy stuff like that. Mike Burmeister trained me. We were scouting on some of these cute little country roads here where I live, and they're beautiful, but there's a bunch of rickety bridges. And he looked at it, and they have the little sign that says, gross weight, blah, blah, blah. He said, you got to make sure that bridge can handle a semi going over it to get to the location. Never thought about that. So if you either work with a good location manager or you manage yourself, it makes you a much, much better scout.
And so this just kind of seems like something you just have to get good at. You have to be in the field for real, like you're saying, actually on the field is actually the perfect term here, and just have experience scouting. And then it also seems like I'm guessing you have a lot of records, almost like an encyclopedic type of knowledge of the terrain and the locations and just even the soil. It seems like exactly like, this is this soil, that has that soil. I guess talk about just keeping a rich encyclopedic type of knowledge base.
It's funny because the directors or producers or whoever will call me and they'll say, I'm looking for, X, Y, or Z, this, that, and the other. That was like for Ryan Felipe. He called me from LA when we did a conference call, and he said, I'm looking for a swamp. I'm looking for this. And I started telling him about the locations that I knew of and describing them. And then I sent him some of the pictures, and, he was sold. I mean, it was a done deal. But yeah, I mean, there are things like that. The show that we just did, Backroads, we just did with Alex Pettifer. We had an issue with parking at one of the houses that we shot at because it rained. We had torrential rains, which we have here in Louisiana all the time, and a lot of the semis that haul around the equipment, they got stuck. So as a scout, it's real critical that you not just look at the location, but you look at the supporting factors. Again, where you're going to feed people, where you're going to park people. As a manager, then I also, when I'm doing what's called a location list, which are ones that they found, we've done a contract with, they're locked in is what it's called. I also have to put the information for the call sheets that we get every day, the closest hospital, the closest fire department, the closest this, the closest that, because safety is the biggest issue on set. Unfortunately, that has become a real issue now with what happened a couple of days ago. So, and again, like when we're shooting in the woods, like I showed the picture of the copperhead. I mean, we have alligators, snakes. You got to think about all that kind of stuff and make sure that the crew stays safe.
What happened a couple of days ago?
There was a stuntman, unfortunately, that was killed.
Oh, right. That story. Wow.
Yeah, yeah, and I actually worked with him. He actually was one of our stuntmen on the Philly Kid.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's very sad, very tragic accident.
Yeah. So safety is definitely key, and
It's
thinking
not.
about those things
Yeah,
for location scout. Yeah, it's very important.
yes, it's very important. And then while they're shooting too, it's important that they are mindful of that for all the crew, not just some, for everybody. So
Cool. Well, I think this has been just an awesome, amazing experience to hear all of what goes into location scouting. I think most people just kind of think, yeah, we need to shoot somewhere, let's just find it. But hearing
right.
about the 360 perspective that you have and just your deep bench of knowledge is absolutely incredible. I'm definitely looking at location scouting with a whole new lens.
There's a lot that goes into it, a lot more than people realize. Yeah, a whole
Yeah,
lot.
I think it's totally awesome. So we'll definitely have to get you back on here again for more, and you also do photography as well,
Hmm.
which goes into your background with nature and things like that. So we'll definitely talk about the other side of stuff and get into that as well.
Cool.
Everybody, if you're interested to see more of Bonnie's work, you could visit her website. I believe we have it listed here under the info page or her profile here. And you have Instagram and you have your website, right? And you also
Right.
have Facebook and all those as well. So definitely check out her stuff. Definitely we'll have her on again. Bonnie, thank you so much. This has been absolutely amazing.
Well, thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Adios.